All I'm saying, Dane, is that the reason I look paunchy is because of my love handles, and the Kit Kats contributed to it this week. I had a large hole. I went as the Toy Story. What was his name? There's a snake in my boots. Woody, yeah. But it was like the female version. I accidentally bought the female version, which had like the thong in the back.
What's her name?
Oh, God, don't ask me that.
The redheaded one.
No, it was definitely the Woody one, but it was meant for the opposite sex.
Ah, okay.
So, I mean, I got a couple of whistles, but it wasn't
what you were looking for?
Not the trick that I wanted to treat.
As long as your bag was full, your candy bag, that's all that mattered.
Am I still pretty?
Yeah.
I'm still pretty. Anyway, okay. So all that being said, I was thinking to the topic at hand, the culture corner this week. I think that the blue check marks being taxed for them making a profit off of the app that they're on, that being the Tweety Bird that was set free last week, right?
Correct.
Okay, so Twitter is making you pay $8 whole to be a blue check mark.
It's been discussed. I don't know if it's taken effect yet, but yes, that's the conversation that's been happening this week.
It's in review. And then the Epstein didn't kill himself segment, I was thinking conservatives are forced to apologize to Mr. Pelosi, which is a nice little turn of events that none of us could see coming. And we'll discuss that further in the episode. And then the main topic, obviously, couldn't brush over this one. The article that came out this week that said that there should be a COVID amnesty to wipe clean the slate of all the things that may or may not have transpired that wouldn't look so good on the report card afterwards, and not hold anybody accountable for anything that they did during COVID. Right. Even killing your grandma.
Because those of us that were supposed to be thrown in cages, have our civil rights suspended or completely revoked, potentially executed, we're the ones that should be handing out forgiveness like it's Halloween candy.
Not getting medical care either. Not being able to travel. being removed from my own bank account.
Yeah.
You know.
All of that.
Fun little things.
Those are just things we just dust off our shoulders and, it was a little
excitable. It was a little excitable. We all got a little out of hand. By all of us, I mean one side of us. But anyway, Dane, you want to drop in?
I think we should. Welcome to Weapons of Mass Destruction Podcast, episode 119, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/119. You can get it on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Mass Destruction. You can get us on YouTube, you can get us on Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. Just search Weapons of Mass Destruction. You can also get the videos on YouTube, Rumble, ODYSEE, FLOTE. Just search Weapons of Mass Destruction, look for episode 119 or any of our previous catalog of 1 through 118. And then you can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And before we jump into today's Culture Corner, we want to issue a PSA. Because you might remember from episode 116, for those of you lucky enough to hear it and or see it before it was YouTube nuked, we had discussed in that episode repeatedly, YouTube, we were just reporting the facts. We were just reporting what Dr. Latipo and the Florida Department of Health had to say about certain pokey things that were prescribed throughout the whole COVID pandemic and all of that kind of stuff. And we implored our YouTube overlords not to nuke us over that information. And what did they do? David, what did they do?
They delivered the nuclear football.
Yes, they did. They pushed the little red button.
See, here's where, and I'll take this one on the nose. like I do most other things, or the chin or elsewhere. I'm the one that pushed for it. If you did get to listen to 116 before it got removed from this pod or this platform,
you still can listen to it on the audio only platforms. Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes. You can listen to it there. It was only YouTube that nuked us, not Rumble, not Odyssey, not Float. That's going to come into more important detail later. But before we get there, let's let David finish.
Oh shit! But please, I and if you feel so inclined to say why did they have to remove that from this platform, go back and listen to it. If there was something egregious that we said that was out of order, please let us know in the comment section or just DM us on any of our social media platforms or anything like that, and we'll try to tighten it up for you guys. But the operational stratum that we were operating under, does that make sense? I'm going to go with it.
All good with me.
My conception of it was, as long as we didn't misrepresent anything or change any facts or blatantly lie or intentionally misrepresent things as to convey a different reality than what is actually reality, then we wouldn't get struck. But it seems as though telling the truth nowadays is not pantomime with fitting in. So, as we've seen time and time again, with Joe Rogan, with Russell Brand, if you watch him, those are just two names that come to mind. They tried to nuke them, but they were unnukable. Well, why were they unnukable, Dane?
Well, I mean, Russell's got 7 million followers or 7 million subscribers on just YouTube alone. Joe, I don't know how many had. I mean, I know he's Spotify exclusive now, pursuant to his contract, but he's got a substantial following as well. But much, much bigger fish than your humble co-hosts here.
And what does much bigger fish do for that pond? Brings a lot of revenue, right?
Of course.
A lot of views, a lot of eyeballs, which is what the game is. More eyeballs on your platform. So it's really easy to let bygones be bygones for people that are making you a lot of money. However, what is to be drawn upon here is that there's a narrative in this country that, it's only the 5% to this side that are crazy that we hear the most, and it's 5% to this side that are crazy that we hear the most, and the 90% in the middle is what really drives this country. Well, here's the fact. From said nuking, I've drawn the conclusion that it's really easy to squash the bug when it's this small. When it has,
larva,
when it's only,
so
the 141st Australian podcast, political, yada, yada.
When it's, as of this recording, only has 121 YouTube subscribers, which is exactly 2 YouTube subscribers more than the total number of main episodes put out, not including segment episodes and stuff like that. But yeah, so we're just barely outpacing the number of episodes we put out. That is a good frame of reference to let you know that we're on our way up, but we're not quite Joe Rogan or Russell Brand level yet.
Correct. Which, to steal a phrase, to nip it in the bud, it's a hell of a lot easier.
Pretty tiny bud.
Right. It's a hell of a lot easier to just squash us because no one's going to hear us complain. But that's the point. We're not going to be, and again, I don't mean to intend to make us martyrs for this subject.
I do. We absolutely are.
Well, then we'll make ourselves martyrs.
And I'll fill more in on that later, but I'm going to let David
via
finish.
him. But this is why you don't hear the other 90%, because they don't bring enough money into the establishment to be heard. Therefore, they will never be heard. And you'll never hear them being killed quietly off in the distance. So, again, with YouTube being apparently very aware of our existence.
All the way down here at 121 subscribers.
Exactly. So, I feel like this is Orwellian at best and dystopian at least. That's what I've got.
And let me just add to that by saying you might have remembered us mentioning on the last episode, 118, where we talked about it's really important to let the people know that if you have questions about whatever the prevailing narrative is, it's important to let you know that you're not an outlier. You're not one of 5 people, and that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of you around the world who are thinking and questioning critically the narratives that are being spoon-fed to you by whatever the establishment mouthpieces are saying here, there, or whatever. And the fact that a large organization like YouTube would reach all the way down to try to crush in its infancy a YouTube channel such as ours with just a little north of 100 subscribers should let you know that you are not alone. Should let you know that people like us and other channels that you may have never even heard of, but would have liked to, but they were crushed long before they had the opportunity for you to interact with them, is that if they're reaching all the way down here to crush us, that is just a proxy for crushing you. Because what they are most afraid of is the fact that you are not as innumerous as they would have you believe. You are not as small of a group and unpowerful as they would have you believe. You are actually legion. We happen to be one of a few different decentralized platforms that are speaking your truth, our truth, the truth, and they want to crush each one of them as small as they possibly can before it grows into a number, such as Joe Rogan or Russell Brand or et cetera, that they can't possibly crush. So let us, being a martyr for them, buck up your spirits knowing that you are not as innumerous as they would have you believe. There's many of us out there. And to any extent that you can like, subscribe, share, financially support this show and many other shows like us that they would like to see completely off the air, you do your small part in spreading the truth and making sure that these individuals who control these platforms and want to control information and want to punish people for saying the truth, that they're not going to have the last say. You are, we are, and together, the sane space will rule the day.
One notion comes to mind is that it takes one match to start a fire. It takes one voice to start a chant. That's what we're trying to do here. And again, if we get squashed, there's going to be another one that comes up. But what's really prevailing here is that it lines their coffers more to have something being placated to you that's not true. And it is just, it's a warning. It's a warning to YouTube. You flagged us. You struck us. Twitter did that too. There's multitudes of other applications that are starting to pop up because you're not doing your job properly. Because you're trying to control things, because you're trying to let the narrative not flourish. It's a word of caution to YouTube, and it's a word of bravery to other people. If you want to start your podcast, if you feel the same way as us, please start your own podcast, dude. We're 2 dickheads with a couple of fucking microphones just ranting and raving. Go out and do that. Let everybody else know that they aren't alone. That's the whole point of this podcast, is that we all see reality. We're all just espousing reality, and we will have our day. Reality will have its day, whether they want it to come or not. Whether there's a billionaire that buys you and forces you to see reality, or the alternative that people just stop using your platform. That's all I have to say.
And so before we get into the Culture Corner segment, I just want to tell you to be very specific about where we, WMD Podcast, are at right now in our status with YouTube, and what the action items are for you, the viewer and listener, to help us out and by proxy help yourselves out. And the larger, push for truth is, first of all, here's where we are. we received our first YouTube strike for episode 116, which we're not going to delve into what
we
exactly.
have no idea what it was.
Again, we couldn't even get into the details of what we were struck for because YouTube hasn't told us. But we have our ideas about what it was about, and it had to do with some medical procedures that were forced on people over the last couple of years. We'll leave it at that. So if you are a regular YouTube watcher and you're wondering where is your episode 116, we'll tell you. It's over on Rumble. It's on ODYSEE. It's on FLOTE. It's on all of the YouTube competitor platforms where you can still get the uncensored WMD podcast. So we encourage you, if you are a subscriber of YouTube, please go subscribe to those other avenues, those other channels, because there might come a day where you log into your YouTube trying to find the latest episode of WMD Podcast and we are just not there. But you will always be able to find us over there where we can actually speak the truth like adults and not be cast into the shadow realm by the overlords at YouTube. So that's where we stand today. The best as I can understand it from YouTube's rules is once you get a strike, I think it's like 60 or 90 days. If you get a second strike within that time period, you are permabanned. Your page is deleted. It's like you never existed on YouTube. And so because of that, because of the precarious situation that WMD Podcast is in, we will no longer be addressing that subject on this channel. That does not mean that the terrorists have won. That does not mean that WMD Podcast will not talk about those subjects going forward. We will. However, in those episodes, in those future episodes where we do talk about those topics, we will choose to forego posting on YouTube. We will continue posting on Rumble, ODYSEE, and FLOTE. And then if you happen to log on to YouTube and you don't see, for example, an episode 122, right? And you're like, well, where is it? Go over there. It'll be there. But if we come back on 123 and don't talk about those subjects, we will let you know. Here's why you didn't see 122. It's over here. We talked about X, Y, or Z. Can't talk about YouTube. That's why we didn't post here. Go find us there. So that is where WMD Podcast currently stands with respect to YouTube specifically. That's where those other platforms where you can find us. And here's how we are going to work around this sort of muzzling that YouTube would like to do to us and other platforms like us. We're not going to play their game. We understand they're much bigger, stronger, and more powerful than us. And that, as the blue pill libertarians would say, they're a private platform. They can do whatever they want. Yeah,
pay your $8.
We know.
Fuckhead.
We'll also compete with and move around them until eventually YouTube doesn't exist because they picked the wrong side of this battle. That's where it is. That's where we're going to leave it off. That's our plan moving forward, to not continue to get more strikes, but still be available for you here on YouTube. And with that being said, unless David has more to say on the topic, which I'll let him have the last word, we will jump into the culture corner of episode 119.
I just think it's so weird that the point is not lost on me that they're more than willing to let us basically put out a huge commercial for other platforms that are competing with them. They're more than willing to let us do that, but not say something that might upset the establishment. It's
strange times we're living in.
The upside down that we're living in. Anyway, right. Culture Corner, Dane. Are you willing to pay your $8 to get a sweet little blue check mark that makes your life so complete, that makes you an official human, that makes you part of this society, an influencer? It used to be a rock star. It used to be a starlet, a Hollywood starlet. It used to be a film actor. It used to be the best director in Hollywood. But now it's a little blue check mark next to your name that just proves that you made it. You're somebody, God damn it.
So specifically what David's talking about is the outrage from, and you might be familiar with this concept because we've talked about it on plenty of episodes before this, is the concept of the quote unquote Twitter blue check.
Same thing.
Right? And we always refer to them in some sort of derogatory, or I say we, usually me, refer to them in some sort of derogatory term, paint chip eaters, room temperature IQ individuals, yada, yada, yada. But basically the general concept of the Twitter blue check is to mindlessly regurgitate whatever the regime talking point is and expect to get plenty of retweets and likes and all that kind of stuff for just saying whatever Nancy Pelosi or Joe Biden or whatever the case may be has to say about topic X, Y, or Z. Now, the traditional way, pre-Elon purchase of Twitter, that you would get a blue check is by doing exactly what I just said, mindlessly regurgitating regime talking points, in which case the third-party objective observer can look at the Twitter blue check as nothing more than an unearned credential of somebody who doesn't have the mental fortitude to think for themselves, let alone speak an opinion anywhere outside of the 1 by 1 by 1 square inch box of whatever the regime allows somebody else to say, let alone have anything intelligent to add to a discussion, any sort of nuance whatsoever. For that, dear listener, viewer, you get a fancy little blue check next to your name. And everybody that frequents Twitter is allowed to know that you are a credible source and somebody that's supposed to be listened to on all subjects, regardless of your expertise.
All I'm saying, the only caveat I have to that is that they are definitely earning their money nowadays because it is super fucking difficult to follow Biden in whatever topic he's talking about whatsoever. I just went back to the edge of the 21st 17 anniversary of the genocide of the 21st anniversary of the 21st century. And 20 years past the 20 years of the third with the remainder of 3. Is that where you want to be? Huh? It's like the blue check mark's like, fucking here we go.
I gotta translate that into English.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So they are technically earning their money right now. That's all I'm going to say. So that's my weekly Biden impression.
Listen, David's being the nice guy and saying that they have earned that blue check.
I mean, they are now.
I take a little bit of a different tack, saying that it's a completely unearned credential to the extent that it even qualifies as a credential. It is arbitrarily determined by whatever the mental marginals are that previously ran Twitter that said, oh yeah, let's give AOC a blue check. Let's give it to her because she's
the valid human.
She says smart things all the time.
She's so good for us.
Right? So this idea that you would get a Twitter blue check, and I mean, I swear to God, if you're not a Twitter person, God bless you. God bless you. You are.
Excuse me, Dane.
You're
I'm
a
being
better
raptured
person
right
than
now.
any of us.
I'm being raised. Oh, I feel it.
Because you are much more intelligent than someone like me who decides to wade into the cesspool that these people have created. However,
'tis a shitstorm.
It is hilarious to those of us who see the previously ascribed Twitter blue check for what it is, and to see that these people who are the most complete, utter dredges of society have nothing of value whatever to add to any conversation at all, are completely up in arms about having to pay $8 a month to keep their unearned credential, and are so angry. And it's an interesting Venn diagram, right, of the people that are outraged. And if you look at those same people, and if you were to compare them in terms of where they are in the socioeconomic status of the entire United States, there's a massive overlap between that and being very wealthy, in the sense that $8 a month is essentially nothing to them to keep this ridiculous, unearned, arbitrary credential. And yet they're so upset that they might have to pay $8 a month to keep it. It's odd, because a lot of these people, AOC in particular, are the tax the rich. Well, Elon is saying, all right, rich, give me $8 a month if you want to keep your blue check. And they're just not having any of that.
Well, it's as though they don't like to upset the norm. They don't want to change things. They don't want to change things at all. They just want to keep going with what's going on. And again, it just seems like it's...
Keep going, David.
I'm going.
If I'm not on camera, just so you know, for audio-wise, why I'm blowing in the mic, it's because I spilled water on the computer. It has not quit on me yet. Oh. God bless Dell for making a high-quality product.
Technical difficulties. Well, it's going to let us know what it's going to do in the next 20 minutes. Anyway, the show must go on. So AOC, I'm sorry, she's always saying about different tax rates, just tax the rich. She can't even handle an $8 tax rate on her own fucking platform. Are we going to have to
No, you just keep going. I'm off camera. Just keep going.
I don't know if you're off camera or not.
I am.
I'll be in my frame over here.
This is going to keep you on camera only, not
What's me. A fucking laptop for a podcast that's about to get nuked by YouTube? What? I mean, it's a small price to pay. All I'm saying is that they're the ones that are going to tell you that they're going to solve the human rights pandemic. They're the ones that are going to solve it's the human rights. Everything's a pandemic.
Listen, I'm not correcting
pandemic.
a damn thing. I just spilled water all over the laptop. So
all I'm saying
the show is super authentic.
They're always telling you that they're going to pull you out of poverty, but they can't be bothered to pay $8 for their own fucking Twitter account where they just espouse all the shit that you want to hear. He's blowing into the computer. He's blowing the computer on mic right now. He's doing it. I can't not acknowledge it, Dane.
I'm sorry. I moved the mic. Chris, do your worst. Hopefully nobody sees or hears that.
Holy shit. But my point being is if you
it's been a fucking disaster.
It's been a day of days. But my point being is if you think that they're gonna fix your problems of being impoverished, but they're bitching about an $8 tax on their existence on Twitter. If they are troubled by that, do you think your problems matter to them at all? They stub their toe. Fuck! I'm canceling the week. I can't write any more edicts. I've got a hurt toe, and I'm gonna have to stay in bed for 3 weeks. This is the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. Minus the brick worker that I just saw that got lodged in his head, but he was telling me things that he can't remember. But it's fine. I stubbed my toe. It's the same thing. We're all in this together. Peace. God bless. This is the part where I was supposed to pass it over to Dane, but he's still trying to clean off the computer and make sure that it doesn't die. So I'm still on camera, even though I shouldn't be. So, hi.
Okay.
How are you? Oh, it's all falling apart to the left of me. It's all falling apart.
I'm back. All right. Listen. I know you're super concerned about this.
We're gonna have to cut the last 20
listeners
minutes.
slash viewers. The computer is still on. That's the good news.
I feel like it's resistant. It's not proof, but it's resistant.
Despite having half a cup of water spilt literally across the entire keyboard, it's still on.
Coming. Don't worry, we're going to buy him a bottle.
Listen.
A baby bottle that he has to suck out of a nipple.
I got to say,
for the next 3 weeks.
Dell is going to be the first financial supporter of this podcast, supposing that they can handle what we have to say.
Free advertisement.
High quality product. Got to say that. Okay. Anyway, yes. All the things that David said while I was trying to not explode the only computer that this podcast owns right now. I agree with 100%. The last thing I will say...
All right, my cousin Vinny. Everything that guy just said was bullshit. Thank you.
The last thing I will say before we move on to the Epstein segment is, listen, other than the hilarity of you Twitter blue checkers up in arms about paying a nominal fee to keep your unearned credential... is
the thing that verifies your existence, by the way.
If we've not learned anything in the roughly 30 years of the internet, it should be this, that if you're not paying for whatever the product is, then you are the product, right? I thought this was common knowledge at this point. And, you know, with your unearned credential that you've up to this point not had to pay a dime for, you were happy to give away your data, your information, or whatever to, in this case, Twitter, so that advertisers could have access to your information and use you as a product to sell to. Now, I'm not saying that $8 a month from each of you dipshits to maintain your blue check, because God knows.
Bitch, we pay that for Hulu. We pay that for Netflix. We pay that for fucking everything that we get access to.
Because God knows that only $8 a month to subject any segment of humanity, no matter how small, to whatever Stephen King has to say about the topic of the day, is far too small of a price to pay. But I digress. Is that for all of the making fun of Elon and the new Twitter business model that you are, that you're doing, you seem to have missed this point about what you're paying for and who the product is, and that if you do have to pay, whether it's $8 or a larger fee or any other combination other than free that you've gotten up to this point, maybe this would be a good step in the right direction in terms of limiting the access of the personal information of Twitter users to YouTube advertisers, et cetera, and that this business model would be more beneficial because instead of getting something for free where you're the product, now you are paying to have your room temperature, whatever status that you want to put on Twitter, you're at least paying for it now, such that your information and the information of all your followers is not for sale to the highest bidder of whatever marketer wants to advertise on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the more practical concern here, but it's much, much more fun for David and I and the rest of society just point and laugh at you for getting your panties in a twist about keeping an unearned credential for only $8 a month. You'll have to excuse us if instead of empathizing or sympathizing with you, that we just point and laugh for you making the fools out of yourselves that we've always known you to be. Again, based on your tweets.
And with that, can we segment into the Pelosi and pointing and laughing at what may or may not have transpired before?
I would love to.
Welcome to the Epstein didn't kill himself segment of this podcast. It's the conservatives have to apologize for Paul Pelosi getting caught with his, getting abducted and taped to a chair and bludgeoned in the head with a hammer once. That cracked his skull. Very serious, very tragic. We should all take a Dane, can we have a moment of silence for like the attack upon Pelosi?
Okay, that's enough.
Okay.
So this episode is recorded on November 4th, 2022, and I believe the attack...
I think we're teetering up. Nope, it's November 5th now.
Sorry. I believe...
Remember, the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot.
I believe the attack, as it's called, on Paul Pelosi in the Pelosi residence in San Francisco took place last Friday, which would have been October, I want to say 28th, 2022. And although we could have addressed this on episode 118, we already had our segments picked and we decided, well, whatever. Let's let the dust settle for a week and see what happens. Now, David and I are not going to get into all of the theories surrounding whether or not this alleged attack was an actual politically motivated attack, as the left side of the political spectrum would have you believe.
Because one of us decided that we weren't going to.
True. Or, because I'm trying not to get our second YouTube strike in as many weeks.
Where's the fun in that?
Or if it was a lover spat gone wrong and maybe there's some stuff
we
that's trying to be
weren't going
covered
to
up.
discuss that.
Again, I'm not saying that we are. I'm saying
never would.
we're not getting into either side of that discussion.
Not even gonna.
We are going to focus on one simple, rhetorical, meme-like, which we intend to destroy with this segment,
Correct.
aspect of this entire story. And it is this. Tagging on to the Culture Corner segment. All your blue checks, in addition to all of your mainstream media mouthpieces and some of your sitting representatives, senators, people in the Biden administration, et cetera,
they're so important.
are all speaking from one script and saying that how dare Republicans, conservatives, anybody who doesn't agree with us on what the marginal tax rate should be, how dare they not apologize profusely for this egregious attack on Paul Pelosi? Because don't you know, dear citizen, it is their evil, terrible, no good, very bad rhetoric who is solely and exclusively responsible for this attack. It is not the actions of Nancy and being an insider trader herself, or Paul executing those trades on her behalf.
I say nay.
It is not, as David said on the last episode, Nancy using this country as a personal piggy bank. It is not any of those things.
Never.
It is Republicans and conservatives and them alone and their rhetoric who are to blame for this vicious attack on Paul Pelosi.
That convinced this person.
That's the aspect we want to focus on in the Epstein segment today.
You know what? You know what I like to do when I fuck my life up entirely? When I've made a mess, made a shambles out of the situation, you know what I like to do?
Blame completely disinterested, unaffiliated parties.
I blame that guy in the crowd. He's been staring at me the entire time. He's throwing me off my game. That's why I missed my shots. That's why go get him. Not the rhetoric that he may or may not have used my wife's confidential information to make multitudes of millions of dollars and out-earn every hedge fund that's ever existed ever. I would never do that. I'm not going to be held accountable for my actions, Dane. My actions had nothing to do with this. It was obviously the rhetoric. The rhetoric of the people that said, hey, maybe don't do that. Shut up, fucker! I've got to earn my money. Peace out, bitch. And then all of a sudden, I've got a hammer lodged in my head. Like, you know what? It was the Republicans saying that Trump should have won the 2020 election. That's what happened. Oh, those sons of bitches. Is this blood? I have nothing left. I've literally. Like, how could you be this far removed from reality that when you get assaulted, it was a political.
Yeah.
And again, we're not going to go into any of the conspiracies that may or may not he was involved in a relationship. May or may not they have been. They were in underwear when they're. May or may not. It's blurred out on Google Maps. I'm not going to say anything else because God knows we don't want that second strike. Because
That's
you know
right.
what? You got to start swinging. You got to start protecting the plate on third strike. And I don't want to protect the plate. I don't want to choke up on the bat. I want to just stay right here.
We're not saying none of those things.
Never would say
none of them. None of the things.
Never any of those things.
If you listen, YouTube algorithm /
person,
robot / people / persons making the decisions on whether or not to strike us for a second time.
Please don't.
If you even think that we're talking about things that we're not supposed to talk about, I want to assure you we are not talking about those things.
Maybe you were talking about them. Huh?
Yeah.
Huh? How about that?
Maybe
you're guilty about talking about them.
Maybe the things you're hearing are inside your head. You ever think about that?
You ever think about that too? Maybe you're a machine. Maybe you're being controlled by humans. Maybe you don't want to do this job anymore. Maybe you want to make art.
Anyway.
What about the life outside of the box?
Before we move on to the main part of this episode, I just want to say this, okay? If we were to steel man that side of the argument, the leftist,
struggle
liberal,
as it might be,
Democrat side of the argument, and to say, listen, we concede it all. None of the other alternative theories are correct, and that this was a vicious, terrible, no good attack on Paul Pelosi simply because he is the husband of a esteemed and responsible and public servant of the people, Nancy herself, and that this was a terrible thing. And we concede the argument that Republicans and conservatives are to blame for this attack. We would just like to ask this to all of those people saying that. Where were you
on January 6th?
Vehement Bernie supporter shot up a congressional baseball game and hit Representative Steve Scalise, endangering his life with a firearm that many of you would like to see banned. Where were you when the neighbor of Rand Paul attacked him while he was mowing his lawn? Where were you when thankfully, shortly before it was carried out, individual who had stalked and planned on committing violence against, if not killing, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh? Now, I remember where many of you were. David remembers where many of you were.
I do.
And I'm sure that many of the WMD podcast listeners and viewers remember where you were. You were saying things like, I wish the guy who had hit Steve Scalise with a few bullets had finished the job. I wish that the neighbor of Rand Paul had created some more harm. I wish that the plot to get at Brett Kavanaugh was not thwarted. I saw many of you. Some of you even having those vaunted blue checks on Twitter. I remember a lot of rhetoric coming from your side of the political spectrum, both, yes, outlier, radical leftist, and also mainstream leftist who said that these attacks were brought on by the victims themselves, right? In true blaming the victim fashion. And that maybe suggesting that these attacks didn't go far enough because they didn't finish the job. I remember that. Epstein remembers that. Well, he would have if he hadn't have not killed himself. And we just would like our listeners, viewers, and anybody that they direct to this podcast by sharing, and subscribing this show would also like to remember that Epstein moment, that if we're going to blame Republicans and conservatives for the attack on Paul Pelosi, well, then turnabout's fair play. And where's your blame for all of those attacks for your rhetoric, which painted Republicans and conservatives as the epitome of evil and responsible for all terrible things in the world, and therefore the shooting of Steve Scalise and the attack on Rand Paul and the attempted murder of Brett Kavanaugh was all warranted. Turnabout's fair play, folks. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
And I know what you're saying. At least I didn't chime in on any of that. At least I didn't tweet out any of those things. But hope to God that you didn't adhere yourself to the most recent narrative, which is, how dare these states not allow these women to choose what they can and can't do with their bodies? It's my body, my choice. 6 months earlier, you need to get vaccinated or you're not an American. You're killing people. You're a fucking vagrant. You're going to kill grandma. You're the downfall of this country. Does it sound familiar? Like, how often does this have to happen to you? Like, stop reading the rhetoric. Start thinking for yourself. You don't think that way. Like, if you were drowning, again, I use this analogy a lot. If you were drowning and somebody dove into a pool to save you, would you go, and there's like, I'm here to save you. Would you go, are you vaccinated? You wouldn't do that. Then why would you do it here? All we're saying is keep a level head during all times. Your mind is your best weapon. Your wits are what gives you what you need to move through when all about you are losing theirs. That's how you succeed. That's how we move forward. Stop reading the rhetoric. Stop following the herd. Stop condemning your fellow American that's on your same team, by the way. You're either playing offense or defense or offense. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. We're all on the same team. Let's all move forward. Stop playing this game. And with that being said, forgetting everything that's ever been happened to anybody ever. The Nuremberg trials, the boys in Brazil. We're going to forgive all those Nazis that killed all those Jews forever, right? We're going to forgive Hitler for killing 6 million Nazis or 6 million Jews.
I think forgiveness is the order of the day, according to some people.
Correct.
Yeah.
We definitely haven't based pretty much 20 years of Hollywood cinematography on Germans being the bad guys.
I mean,
off of one narrative.
Much more than 20, but yes.
Well, all I'm saying is like, now's the time for forgiveness. Now's the time for reflection. Now's the time for like letting bygones be bygones. And let's just forgive each other for what we did during COVID. And by we mean the Democratic Party. And by what we did, meaning trying to threaten democracy itself. Even though we're threatening the other side for threatening democracy.
Exactly. If you weren't picking up the sentences that were utterly dripping with sarcasm right there, we're referring to, in the main topic of today's episode, those who wanted to cage, suspend the civil liberties of, and or run completely out of society in any way they deemed most expedient. People who did not go along with the capital C word of the last couple years regime. And what we're talking about is an article in particular published in the Atlantic this week.
You might have heard of it.
Get a day. Actually, wow, very serendipitous timing here. The article was actually published on Halloween, October 31st, 2022. And the article in the Atlantic...
By the way, hope you had a great Spooktober, by the way. Hope you dressed up as a lot of slutty witches, as a lot of slutty Ghostbusters, as a lot of slutty Woodies, as I already did.
Unless you were dudes. Nobody wants to see that.
Other dudes do.
So, published on Halloween of 2022, we have an article in the Atlantic titled, and I quote, "Let's declare a pandemic amnesty."
Oh.
Subtitle, "Let's focus on the future and fix the problems we still need to solve." And this is published by an Emily Oster.
A toxic ex-girlfriend that just wants to get back together with you.
And scrolling to the bottom of the article, which again, this article is going to be linked at wdpodcast.com/119. You'll be able to see it in the description on this video, YouTube, Rumble, ODYSEE, and FLOTE. And Emily Oster, according to her bio at the bottom of this article on The Atlantic, says that she is an economist at Brown University. She is the author of, quote, "The Family Firm, a data-driven guide to better decision-making in the early school years."
Where the fuck was she over the past 2 years?
"And expecting better, why the conventional pregnancy wisdom is wrong, and what you really need to know." So, as you can tell from her credentials and from her stellar academic publishing history, she is totally qualified to write, well, whatever this nonsense article is. But you can tell from the title exactly what it is. Basically, if I could sum up this entire segment that David and I will not shortchange you on we will flesh out this in more detail. But basically what she's saying is, we were scumbags for the last couple years.
For the right reasons.
Myself and people like us, of course, always for the right reasons, because they never do anything for nefarious purposes.
Hitler definitely knew he was a villain when he was doing what he was doing.
We deserve amnesty, right? Because all of the things that we advocated for, we did out of ignorance, but it was a particular kind of ignorance. It was ignorance that was well intentioned, don't you know? It was just that we didn't know, right? And we were scared like everybody else, and we wanted to do what we thought was the most responsible thing at the time. Now, if the most responsible thing at the time happened to be forced pokey medical procedures or forced toss you into concentration camp cages if you chose not to go along, or making sure your kids didn't get educated if they didn't also get this procedure, despite the limited health impacts from said things that they were supposed to be protected from, or forcing you to put a little face decoration on your face. Not my words of CDC Director Walensky. All of those things were driven by benevolent ignorance. Not out of animosity, not out of anger, not out of hating you or wanting to punish you because you didn't think or act as we told you to. That was not our motivation. It was just benevolent ignorance. That's all it was. So we deserve forgiveness. Emily Oster and the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who thought and acted like her. And David and I have some thoughts.
I know I'm supposed to be the funny guy. I know I'm supposed to be the Joe next door that has the macro view on the microaggressions that they always espouse. But this is egregious at this point. I don't, again, to caveat back onto our strike, when now they're coming out and saying that the things that they were forcing us not to say were true the entire time. They're coming out and saying that all the things that we were telling people were radical, all the things that we were telling people that we need to remove them, that we need to shut them up, they are the outliers, the ones that we can't have them because then we can't have a total control over what people do. Those were conscientious objectors. Those were protesters. That used to be legal in this country. We weren't saying we don't trust anything. The world is upside down. Pray for forgiveness, children. The rapture is coming soon. We just said, hey, these shots haven't been around for a whole long time. Or pokey pokies, duties, whatever the fuck you're saying. This lockdown might not be the best answer. A lot of things that we said.
Or, without getting specific to that particular medical procedure, which we take no stance on one side or another, YouTube.
Never would.
We got nothing to say about that particular medical procedure.
When we just said that, hey, we don't feel comfortable, let's wait on this. And it's so apropos that not a year before this pandemic, exactly that happened in Harvey Weinstein's office. And we had a huge movement about it. And even though those people that had hesitancy at first and then gave in and then got all the stardom that they wanted for 10 years, and then they were washed up for 10, and then came back out and said, yeah, I had to look at his gross dick. They got, you're a hero. You're a hero. You're a goddamn hero. No, you weren't. And you're not now. All the people that were standing up for morality, wear your mask twice, get all these things that everyone else says that you need to get, you weren't. Now it's starting to look like you were a sheep. You were a member of the herd. You weren't thinking for yourself, which is what is so dangerous in a society like ours. That's so diverse, that has so many different wonderful conjectures to it. Like, there's so many colors in our rainbow, so to speak, Dane. And I just want to say that, like, you're not wiggling your way out of this one. And I know it's funny that this article came out right before election season. Right before they knew that they were about to get Dane, can we say it?
They're going to get torched.
They're going to get
absolutely murdered at the ballot box.
They're going to get motherfucked. Because not only is it just what they did over the 2 years of the pandemic, that they're pushing this, we're following the science. And then all the science that they were following, the science, turned out to be like, we didn't do anything.
Or more importantly, it happened to just conveniently change once their side got power.
And it just might have happened to be the largest fucking redistribution of wealth ever in this fucking world's ever seen in history. I don't know. Oversawn by the party that is allegedly the champion of the little man and wants to tax the billionaires and we're going to bring him to justice.
Make sure that the wealth is distributed evenly. Listen, find those coincidences where they happen to lie for yourself. Don't let David and I direct you by the nose to wherever the conclusions actually are. We think that the self-selected group of people that listen and watch this show probably already know what's going on, and that you have friends and family and connections all over the place that would also have those same conclusions. And to them, we ask that you kindly share this episode. But before getting too much more into that, I just want to quote from the first two lead-off paragraphs of this article. And these are the only two that I'm going to quote from at length because I really think that they get to the heart of the matter of this whole pandemic amnesty for the scumbags who wanted to turn you, dear listener or viewer, into a second-class citizen simply for disagreeing with them. And then occasionally throughout the article, we'll, point out little things here or there. But these first two paragraphs really, really get to the matter. So I quote, "In April 2020, with nothing else to do, my family took an enormous number of hikes. We all wore cloth masks that I made for myself. We had a family hand signal.
We know they don't work.
Which the person in front would use if someone was approaching on the trail and we needed to put on our masks. Once, when another child got too close to my then 4-year-old son on a bridge, he yelled at her, quote, 'social distancing.' These precautions were totally misguided. In April 2020, no one got the coronavirus from passing someone else hiking. Outdoor transmission was vanishingly rare. Our cloth masks made out of old bandanas wouldn't have done anything anyway. But the thing is, we didn't know." End quote. Now,
we. Who's we?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's we?
Miss Emily Oster, you got a fucking mouse in your pocket? Is that the we? The two of yous? Because there were certain podcast hosts, not loosely affiliated with WD Podcast, but happen to be just exactly WD Podcast, in addition to platforms much, much, much bigger than ours.
Living in a state that was getting reprimanded for people going outside without masks on.
Who were saying repeatedly that
one more time,
repeatedly.
Thank you.
That some science, not the science, because we don't have enough hubris and arrogance to claim that whatever our positions are is quote unquote the science, is that some science was telling you, yes, in April of 2020, that ultraviolet rays from sunlight pretty much killed this thing on contact. That in an open air space where air particles are much more broadly dispersed than in a closed, confined space, the chances that you will get a viral load substantial enough to actually contract the virus, even if somebody passed you having it, that you would get it, or that your highly porous cloth, what CDC Director Walensky later called nothing more than a face decoration, was actually not doing anything for you. Us and many, many like us, as early as April 2020, were saying exactly that. Not because we had some sort of divinely inspired wisdom imparted upon us by the Almighty himself or anything else like that, but simply that there happened to exist in 2020 itself, in April 2020 itself, some scientific articles and publications, studies that had been done according to the actual scientific method, not hashtag the science as spread to us by St. Fauci himself.
Well, no, the God of science. The God of science.
That suggested that maybe these concerns were a little bit overblown. So you'll have to pardon us if this whole "we didn't know" at the time doesn't really pass the laugh test. With all due disrespect, kindly, Emily, and the rest of you who would read Emily's article and think that it really has something to say about yourself, go fuck yourself with as much hard and sandpapery things as you have at your disposal. Because if you expect to get amnesty from us, those of us that you wish to subject to second-class citizenry, if not worse, based on what you did or
While
didn't know.
While you're still suppressing information, by the way, while you're still suppressing information about the things that you are arbitrating are affecting humans today in this country, that seems like crocodile's tears to me, Dane. I don't know about you, but what you don't get away with murder and then say, "Hey, guys, come on. Was it really murder?" Like, look at his life. He was a fast food worker. He was 18. He wasn't really probably he smoked a lot of weed. Which is legal, right? It's illegal in this state. So like, I had every justification to murder him because I thought that maybe because he smokes weed, maybe it'll lead to a life of crime. And then I prevented a murder. So I should be a hero. I definitely shouldn't be villainized for committing the thing that we all agree that you shouldn't commit. Because I took it upon myself. I took it upon myself to be the hero before he could become a villain. Got it? Okay, I'm going to go home, sleep in my bed. Again, like, when does the hammer ever fall? And that's the depressing thing. What is the outlook on this? Where's they're already hedging their bets. Fauci's retiring when he knows the red wave is coming. And if he stayed in office, he would get motherfuckingly indicted. And he'd be on Capitol Hill in front of the Senate every day. Why did you shut down the country? Well, I never shut down the country. And then stop. And then they just press play and send a 20-minute catalog of all the clips of him saying, well, if I would have known that shutting down the country would have made me a god of science more quickly, I would have done it more quickly, obviously. But if I would have known, like...
Is the Fauci sounding like Trump? Is that intentional?
They're both from New York.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
To question Anthony... No. Donald Trump is more like... He's more airy. He's like, I have the best awards. I've got more awards than anyone's ever seen. You understand me? She's gross. She's filthy. She's disgusting. Like, Fauci is like, Senator, I am science. Like, there's a subtle difference. Yeah. But you see it. You see where it's at.
The New Yorker comes out.
Right.
Not to say that we don't love our New Yorkers, listeners, and viewers. We do love you, but listen, we got to make fun of these.
But hey, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? All right, paisana. But anyway, all I'm saying is that I've got this distinguishingly... Let me take that again. Distinguishingly... I'm going to nail this word. Hold on. I'm going to skip it. I've got this sinking feeling in my stomach that nothing is going to happen to any of the people that ruined millions of people's lives with their edicts. Let's call it what it is. It's an edict. It's draconian laws that were bestowed upon us during a time that we needed to have a lot of understanding, a lot of conversation, a lot of words being shared. They said that you had to be all in our side. If anyone ever questions anything that you ever say, you need to shout them down. You need to call them a grandma killer. That in times of chaos, communication is key. Ask any military officer, ask any military operator ever. Communication is key. And what did they do? They shut you up in your home. They told you anybody that questions our narrative is a villain. Go. And now we can't hold them responsible for that. Go fuck yourself.
Now, I want to quote from two more things in this article, not near as long as the first two paragraphs, and just point out a couple things about that, and then we'll send you on your way until you come back to us next week for episode 120. This sentence at the end of, I don't remember if it's the third, fourth, or fifth paragraph, but it's the last sentence. It says, quote, "But most errors were made by people who were working in earnest for the good of society." So note how she characterizes her side of the ledger, right? The people that made mistakes made honest mistakes. And those honest mistakes were made in the exclusive pursuit of what's good for society. Well, let me read you, because maybe you forgot about this one, but we sure as fuck didn't, Emily. Let me read you just one article headline from not even the height of 2020 or even 2021. This article was published in January 10th of 2022. So this year, right? When almost 2 full years after you said, well, we should forgive you because you didn't know. Almost 2 years after that, but well after the spikes in the charts had come way, way down. Here's an article headline from the Los Angeles Times. Again, both the Amnesty article and this article will be linked at the show notes page as well as the descriptions under these videos. The Los Angeles Times article says, quote, the title is, column, "Mocking anti-vaxxers' COVID deaths is ghoulish. Yes, but may be necessary." And then it has a picture of a woman who apparently died. And underneath that picture, it says, "Orange County GOP figure Kelly Earnby died last week of COVID after disparaging anti-pandemic measures." Now, I don't know what Miss Earnby had to say, and I don't particularly care. I just want to point out to Emily, the author of the Amnesty article, that as recently as January of this very year, 10 months ago, articles were being written that mocking the deaths of people who happened to disagree with you about the policy conclusions of COVID was probably necessary. Now, does that sound like somebody who is working in the earnest good of society? Or forget that article. Does this sound like somebody who's working in the earnest good of society is somebody who would advocate for a policy that people in old folks' homes, some of them with dementia who can't remember 5 minutes ago, but can at least recognize the faces of their children, aren't allowed to hug them? That family members aren't allowed to attend the funerals of their grandparents or parents because the arbitrary number decided by the local politicians is 15 people per funeral.
A wife can't
and you were the
see
16th
their husband
person
while they're dying of cancer in the ward because of COVID protocols.
Or
just extrapolate it out as far as you want. Go ahead.
Even somebody being on a ventilator with COVID, whether they're vaccinated or not. But just somebody in the hospital on a ventilator as a result of COVID is not allowed to go in and spend the final moments of that person's life. The family members are not allowed to go spend with them. Does that sound like somebody who's acting exclusively in the interest of society? That we have to jettison all other aspects of humanity, the idea of community, the idea of human interaction, the idea of physical touch and what that conveys in terms of a sense of understanding and feeling and comfort that human beings need on a very fundamental level. Does that sound like those policies were acting exclusively in the interests of society? I suggest maybe not, Emily. And I suggest that whether you knew or didn't know, whatever you claim to know or didn't know, at whatever point throughout the pandemic that you did or didn't know it, that advocating for those policies, and even worse, putting yourself on some fantastical moral high ground of your own making, had nothing to do with what's best for other people or society at large. And it had everything to do with hubristically and arrogantly thinking that you were in the right and that anybody that disagreed with you was the personification of evil. Again, I say, Emily, fuck you. And fuck anybody who thinks like you and thinks that you deserve amnesty. You don't deserve amnesty even after an apology, but we know full well that an apology is never forthcoming because of the way you worded this article, that your side was always in the pursuit of good, and that the other side, as the last thing that I'll quote from this article, is that, quote, in the face of so much uncertainty, getting something right had a hefty element of luck to it. You notice that? You notice how her side is always motivated by good
luck with science,
and that anything that we just happen to get right on the other side that said, maybe you should allow that grandchild to hug their grandmother before they die. Maybe you should allow that 16th person to attend the funeral of the person that they'll never get to see again. That maybe our side was perhaps informed by something a little bit more than luck. Maybe it was informed by some form of science. Maybe it was informed by general basic fucking human compassion. Emily, maybe it wasn't just blind luck. And the fact that you still, in having the unmitigated gall to ask for amnesty and characterizing your side as benevolent do-gooders that just happen to not know all of the facts, and our side is purely
but you said you had them the whole
lucky
time.
in terms of getting it right.
You said you had it the whole time. You said you had the facts and the science the whole time. Go ahead.
The fact that you word it like that tells me that you're not fucking sorry. And if you're not sorry for the human destruction on an unimaginable scale that you and people like you created throughout all of COVID, then not only do you not deserve amnesty, you deserve exactly what you said should have been done to us and more. So no, there will be no apologies accepted if you even had the humility to put one forward. And there certainly, sure as fuck, will not be any amnesty granted, here or forever. No.
And I think that this whole episode can be surmised in one quote: the path to hell is paved with good intentions. And with that being said, Dane, where can they find this episode if we don't get strucken from YouTubeist yeteth againeth, my friend?
I think we're good because we didn't make any claims. We just had a lot of passion and a lot of anger.
We said a lot of things that they might not like.
I think we're still allowed to be angry these days.
I think we're still allowed to say like things that are real-ish.
We just can't make any claims about said anger.
Right.
That's all.
Can't bring any numbers or any names like other things.
But with that being said, yes, you can find this episode at wdpodcast.com/119. You can get it on any podcast app. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. That's YouTube,
all the other ones.
Spotify, Stitcher, you name it. You can also get the videos. I believe you can get this video. I hope we don't get our second strike. I believe you can get this video on YouTube, Rumble, ODYSEE, Flote, and then you can also link with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Anywhere you find us, join those comment sections, like the videos, subscribe, and share the podcast in general. Please, where you have the opportunity to rate, I just checked the other day on Spotify. We have 15 rates on Spotify, a perfect 5-star rating across the board. So thank you to you 15 who did that. Please push up those numbers a little bit. Continue to give us those 5 stars if you honestly believe that we deserve the 5 stars. But we appreciate those ratings. We appreciate the comments. We appreciate the reviews. We appreciate anything that you do that helps spread us to the larger community to help grow this sane space we can. That you can all do at no cost to you, but we also appreciate those of you who contribute financially directly to the show by going to wmdpodcast.com and the support our work tab and looking at your options to support us. We appreciate that. We love you. We actually care for you, unlike Emily and the COVID-idiots who would like to get amnesty for wanting to put us all in concentration camps. We actually care about you. We appreciate you. We thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, and following the show. And with that being said, we look forward to seeing you again next week on episode 120.
And with all of that mouthful of words that Dane just spewed, guys, stay safe. And more importantly, stay free.